Good afternoon, all of you.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
In today's practical, we will see experiment number 8 to interpret it from the graph by observing the effect of calcium ion and potassium ion on heart rate and force of contraction on isolated heart of frog by using the CD of MSBT. Means in today's experiment, by using CD of MSBT, we will learn effect of calcium ion and potassium ion on heart rate and force of contraction on the isolated heart of frog. Screen is visible to all.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Aim of this experiment is to study the effect of potassium, calcium on frog's heart.
To study the effect of potassium ions and calcium ions on the isolated heart of frog. This is aim of our experiment.
Objectives of this experiment are to understand that tissues remain alive for many hours if surrounded by correct physical and chemical environment during experiments. To understand that potassium ions and calcium ions are physiological salts present in body fluids and show action on heart.
These are the objectives of our experiment. To understand that potassium and calcium ions are physiological salts which are present in the body fluids and shows their actions on heart. Means these ions are present in body fluids and show their action on heart. Then requirements: animal frog physiological solution PSA frog ringer, drug calcium chloride 10 mg per ml, potassium chloride 10 mg per ml. Then instruments: Sherrington's recording, drum and device, Sterling heart lever, modified Sims venous cannula, perfusion bottle and tube, dissecting tray, surgical instrument and disposable insulin syringe, etc. Then theory behind this experiment.
The physiological salt solutions are used to keep isolated tissue and organ preparations surviving throughout the experiment. For frog's heart preparation, frog ringer is the physiological solution of choice. In 1883, Ringer, a scientist, found that sodium ions maintain osmotic condition of heart muscle. He also found out that calcium ions restore the contraction and potassium ions facilitate the relaxation. This study suggests that the concentration of major anions and cations are different outside and inside the cell. Extracellular fluid is rich in sodium ions and chloride ions, and intracellular fluid is rich in potassium ions.
Okay, this is theory behind the experiment, that is effect of calcium ion and potassium ion on heart rate and force of contraction on isolated heart of frog, in which you know about contraction and relaxation. Contraction, it is systole, right? And relaxation is diastole. Relaxation is diastole. Where contraction means it is a period of contraction, that is the heart undergoes while it pumps the blood into the circulation. Heart ज्यावेळेस pump करतो blood, that is contraction. And relaxation, it is period that occurs as chamber fills with the blood, that is relaxation, in which calcium ions restore the contraction. First you have to understand contraction, that is systole, and diastole is the relaxation, in which calcium ion shows the restore the or facilitate contraction effect while Potassium ion facilitate relaxation effect. This study suggests that concentration of major ions, anions and cations are different outside and inside the cell. In cell membrane, then extracellular fluid and intracellular fluids are present here. Proteins, then potassium ion. Potassium ions are present in intracellular fluid. Screen is visible to all.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
In some proportion, chloride ions and also calcium ions. They are present in extracellular fluid. Or extracellular fluid contain chloride ions, also calcium ions and sodium ions. In intracellular fluid, there is potassium ions are present. So this study suggests that concentration of major anions and cations are different outside and inside the cell. That is, extracellular fluid मध्ये different anions असतात, cations असतात, and also in intracellular fluid. Extracellular fluid is rich in sodium ion. In the diagram, you can see the sodium ions, they are in extracellular fluid. Extracellular fluid मध्ये आहेत की intra?
Extra.
Extracellular fluid rich in the extracellular fluid is rich with the sodium ion. Then calcium, sodium and calcium ions. Then and intracellular fluid is rich in potassium ion here. This indicates potassium ion. So intracellular fluid is rich with the potassium ion. You have to draw this diagram in your experiment or in your manual.
At the laboratory level, one can see the effect of potassium and calcium ions on isolated hard preparation by using stock solution of potassium chloride and calcium chloride. Excess of calcium leads to inability of heart to relax completely and heart stops during systole, that is contraction. Excess of potassium leads to inability of heart to contract, and finally heart stops during diastole, that is relaxation.
Okay, these both concepts are opposite to each other when there is excess of calcium. Calcium ची level जास्त असेल तर it leads to inability of heart to relax. Heart relax होत नाही, inability means heart is not able to relax. There is inability of heart to relax completely and heart stop during systole. Systole means contraction, means excessive of calcium, which shows contraction effect or relaxation effect. Excessive calcium. Sound is audible to all.
Contraction.
Contraction.
Means excessive calcium leads to inability of heart to relax completely. Therefore, heart stop during the systole. Systole is the contraction. There is period of contraction that heart undergoes while it pumps the blood into circulation, that is systole. Then excessive potassium, which leads to inability of heart to contract. Heart contract होण्यामध्ये inability होते, enable. And finally heart stop during diastole. Diastole is the relaxation, while excessive potassium, which shows relaxation effect, and excessive calcium, which shows contraction effect, because there is inability to heart relax, and in potassium ion it leads to inability to contract. All of you understand theory behind this experiment. Excessive calcium shows contraction effect and excessive potassium which leads to relaxation. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Then procedure.
For studying the effect of potassium and calcium on frog's heart, perfuse isolated and mounted frog's heart with frog ringer solution. Now start the drum and record normal contractions or recordings of heart on smoked paper for 1 minute. In this tracing,
Okay, firstly, before the calcium आणि पोटॅशियम आयन इफेक्ट त्यांचा ऑब्झर्व करायच्या अगोदरची नॉर्मल ऍक्टिव्हिटी आहे इन अवर लास्ट एक्सपेरिमेंट. जसं की फर्स्टली नॉर्मल ऍक्टिव्हिटी ऑफ फ्रॉक्स हर्ट आपण बघितली. आफ्टर दॅट ॲड्रेनालिन ऍडमिनिस्टर्ड केलं, राईट? देन हर्ट रेट गेट इन्क्रीज लाईक दॅट. फर्स्टली we have to observe normal activity of frog's heart, and then effect of calcium and effect of potassium ion is compared and observed.
things, the number of peaks per minute indicates rate of contraction of heart, whereas height of a single peak indicates force of contraction. You can see that all the peaks in the tracings contraction. You can see that all the peaks in the tracings are of same height and at same distance. This means contractions are rhythmic and with normal tone. Stop the drum, inject 0.1 ml of stock solution of potassium chloride in the cannula. Start the drum immediately and record the response of heart on the smoked paper for 1 minute. We can easily see that the rate of contraction, force of contraction, tone, and rhythmicity is decreased. Repeat the same procedure by injecting 0.2 ml of stock solution of potassium chloride. From these recordings, we can observe that with the increasing concentration of potassium chloride, heart relaxes slowly and finally heart stops in diastole. Similarly, inject 0.1 ml of stock solution of calcium chloride in the cannula and record the response of heart on the smoked paper for 1 minute. We can easily see that the force of contraction, tone, and rhythmicity is increased. Repeat the same procedure by injecting 0.2 ml of stock solution of calcium chloride. From these recordings, we can observe that with the increasing concentration of calcium chloride, heart contracts more vigorously and finally heart stops in systole. From these observations, we can say that in the
Okay, when we inject calcium chloride, then heart rate will be increased. It is observed that heart rate get increased and also force of contraction. And when we inject potassium chloride, then what will happen? What happens?
Heart rate decrease.
Decrease the heart rate. That is, it gets relaxed at diastole.
presence of potassium chloride, heart fails to contract and stops during diastole. Similarly, in the presence of calcium chloride, heart fails to relax completely and stops during systole. Clinically,
Calcium chloride. When we inject calcium chloride, at that time heart fail to relax. Heart relax hot nahi, means relaxation does not occur and it stop during systole, means त्याचं contraction होतं आणि तिथेच ते stop होतं. That is increased heart rate when we administer calcium chloride. While in presence of potassium chloride, heart failed to contract completely and stopped during diastole.
The potassium chloride and calcium chloride are useful in deficient.
Okay, all of you understand what is effect of calcium and effect of potassium ion? The next observation about potassium chloride. Potassium chloride drug dose, then heart rate, force of contraction and tone. Sound is audible to all.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am.
Then 0.1 ml of potassium chloride. See the effect. What happened? Heart rate and force of contraction get
Decreased.
Decrease.
firstly normal. It is normal for heart activity, and when we administer or inject 0.1 ml of potassium chloride, then heart rate and force of contraction get decreased. Then 0.2 ml. What happened? Heart blocks at diastole. म्हणजे रिलॅक्सेशन होऊन नंतर पीक दिसतात का?
No.
No. That
No.
is heart stop or heart block in the diastole. Relaxation होऊन completely heart block होतं. This is about potassium chloride. Then second, calcium chloride, that is effect of calcium ion. When 0.1 ml dose is injected, then what happen in heart rate and force of contraction? Heart rate and force of contraction get force of contraction get increased in normal activity, and when we inject calcium chloride, then increased. When 0.2 ml higher dose is given, 0.1 ml 0.1 it is lower dose, and 0.2 higher dose is given, then what happens? Heart block stop in the systole, means contraction होता, there is heart get block and stop the contraction, that is stop in the systole. Heart हे contraction मध्ये stop होतं.
You have learnt that different physiological fluids exists for perfusing isolated body tissues. Appropriate balance of potassium ions in body fluid maintains relaxation of cardiac muscles. Appropriate balance of calcium ions in body fluid maintains cardiac muscle contractility.
We learn from this experiment, that is calcium ion shows the contraction, that is they block in the systole, and potassium ion they shows the relaxation, that is they stop heart in the diastole. There is appropriate balance of potassium ion in the body fluid which maintain relaxation of cardiac muscle, and calcium ions जर appropriate balance असेल in body fluid, then they maintain contractility, that is contraction. Relaxation is maintained by potassium ion. All of you understand the experiment?
Yes, ma'am.
Calcium ion, they are responsible for contraction or relaxation. They maintain cardiac muscle contractility, that is contraction. And potassium ion,
Relaxation.
Relaxation.
they maintain the relaxation of cardiac muscle. Then calcium ion, when we inject calcium ion, then what happens about on heart rate and force of contraction? Calcium ion inject केलं काय होतं?
Increase.
Heart rate and force of contraction get You have
Heart rate आणि force of contraction increase होतो मॅडम.
therefore tone is also increased, and when we are given higher dose, there is contraction is occur, but at this certain time heart get blocks or stop in the systole. Means contraction मध्ये heart stop होतं. Normal heart rate किती आहे?
30 ते 35 beats.
33 to 30.
30 to 35.
35 beats per minute. You have to grab both this graphical representation in your experiment when we are given 0.1 ml, then 0.2 ml of calcium chloride. Then same for potassium chloride. When we inject potassium chloride in 0.1 ml, that is lower dose, then heart rate and force of contraction get decreased.
Decreased.
Okay, this one also draw. And if we are given higher dose of potassium chloride, then what happens?
Heart blocks in
Heart
diastole.
Relaxation. Heart's relaxation होतं, that is diastole, and after a certain time, heart stop or block in the diastole. म्हणजे relaxation मध्ये heart stop होतं. This is about from the graph by observing the effect of calcium and potassium ion. Graph समजले सगळ्यांना when we are given 0.2 ml and 0.1 ml dose.
Yes, ma'am.
Then on this, the effect of this calcium and potassium ion on the heart rate and force of contraction on isolated heart of frog by using this MSBT CD. So this is about experiment number 8.
The aim of this experiment
Effect of
is
calcium,
to study the effect of
calcium ion and potassium ion. Do you want to see again the observation table or graph?
ग्राफ रिवाइज करा ना शॉपी.
Okay. When we are injected calcium chloride, then heart rate and force of contraction get increased, and also tone is increased. When 0.2 ml, that is higher dose, then heart stop in the system. Then potassium chloride increased or decreased?
Decreased.
Decreased.
And when we are injecting higher dose, then
heart blocks in diastole.
म्हणजे रिलॅक्सेशन होता heart block होतं. Heart block in the diastole. Relaxation मध्ये heart stop होतं. This is about our experiment.
at the laboratory level.
Theory समजली
One can see
तुम्हाला?
the effect of
Yes,
potassium
ma'am.